We low crawled all the way out to the Ukrainian forest to interview the commander of the Special Operations Air Assault Forces here in Ukraine. It's amazing. Here it comes. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Holton, and I'm still in Kyiv. I actually just got back. I guess yesterday was one of those kind of days that God did not want me to put up a podcast because we got a last minute phone call from a guy that I met on like 2 trips ago over here. He works for the government. He's a presidential advisor, and he gave us the opportunity last trip to go down to Kramatorsk with the military and embed with them and some kind of exclusive stuff. And for some reason, he called out of the blue and said, "Hey, do you guys want to go on a mission?" And we said, "Sure." I want to call it a secret mission because it would make it sound cooler, but it's not exactly a secret mission if you just invited a couple of journalists to go along, is it? Nevertheless, it was an adventure for sure. First of all, we had to leave at 2 o'clock in the morning from Kyiv. Now, it's typically a 5.5-hour drive down to Dnipro, and then from there out to the front lines in Donetsk province, it'd be another 3.5 hours. But when we got picked up here in Kyiv, we found out that our driver is a 3-time national champion rally racer in 3 different countries. A Ukrainian guy, he's world famous, and he's apparently one of the greatest drivers of all time, whatever, but he also has a very nice pass that I'd like to get a hold of that allows him to get through all the checkpoints and drive wherever he wants, and I guess he doesn't have to follow the rules because this guy averaged 125 miles an hour all the way to Dnipro. So this 5.5-hour drive became like a sub 3-hour drive, something like that. Unbelievable. The guy was going like 200 kilometers per hour all the way down there. I thought when we got there, God must have something very important for us to do today if we just survived that trip. This guy drove like I've never been driven before. A lot of people say I'm a crazy driver. I am a grandmother driver compared to him. Wow, it was something else. And kind of cool, actually. So from there, we drove out to the front lines. We drove right into the area where the heaviest fighting is, a place called Piske. The Russians are essentially trying to bombard Ukraine out of existence down there. They apparently must have a limitless supply of artillery shells. There just must not have any limit at all because they were firing artillery like boom, 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 nonstop for hours when we were down there. And the guys that we were with said, "Oh yeah, they do that day and night, 24/7. They just constantly bombard." But they don't. The thing is, it's dumb munitions. And they don't really aim. They just sort of aim it in the direction of Ukraine and let fly. So they weren't really hitting much. You can see that from the drone footage out there. The fields in that area are just, they look like Swiss cheese. They're just pockmarked all across there. These fields, where they're just bombing the fields. There's nothing in the fields. They're not aiming for the tree line. They're not aiming, I don't know if they're aiming for anything, bridges, roads. They're just bombing. And so you couldn't really call it a firefight or anything, even though it sounded like heavy fighting. It was all one-sided. For every 100 rounds or so that the Russians fired off coming at us, the Ukrainians might fire one round to their 100. But the difference is the Ukrainians are actually aiming at something, and they usually hit what they're aiming at. So their fire is very effective, where the Russians is not. We learned a lot down there. And I'm not really allowed to show a lot of footage from where we were because not because of what we were doing so much, but because there are whole units of Russian hackers that are combing through footage like that gets put on social media and on the news, and they can literally from one frame, if you're not very careful, they can figure out where you were, and the next thing you know, they're going to start obliterating the entire grid square around that area. So we were in an area they were already trying to obliterate, but even still, we had to be very careful about what we filmed and everything. Nevertheless, so the purpose of our mission was to transport a bunch of technology down to the guys on the front lines. This is stuff that has been donated to Ukraine by private donors, mostly. Starlink internet services, commercial drones, things like that. And they are making very good use of that stuff down on the border. So with the Starlink, these drones are able to do live streaming. One of my drones my Mavic could do that. It does live streaming where you just start a Facebook Live or something like that, and you can, while you're flying it, people can be watching what your camera sees on the drone. These guys are doing that, except doing the live stream as a private live stream where only they can see what's on the drone from far away, and they can share it with other people in their unit. So they have guys down in a bunker, deep underground, and they have run an internet connection down there, and these guys literally sit there and watch what is on the drone overhead, several miles away, or even 20, 30 miles away. It could be anywhere. And they can identify enemy positions, enemy vehicles, and things like that, and get a very precise grid coordinate, talking on the radio to the guy flying, precise grid coordinates to where that enemy vehicle is, for example, translate that information into instructions for their artillery, and then their artillery makes very careful aim, fires one round, and obliterates that vehicle. All in the space of just a minute or two. It's unbelievable to watch. So they're making really good use of the stuff that's being given to them. And it's amazing to me that a $1,000 drone system and a couple $1,000s worth of Starlink internet can be as formidable on the battlefield as a $4 million tank, and probably more so. Where that kind of calculus just shows the difference between 20th century warfare and 21st century warfare. And Russia has not quite figured that out yet. They're trying, but they haven't figured it out. And to listen to the Ukrainian troops talk about how sad it is that they have to kill so many Russians. I mean, they obviously have no love lost for any, Russian soldier, or even the Russian people, but they're like, when we were tasked to hold this side of the riverbank, and the Russians wanted to cross the river, wanted to advance on us, and they were sending wave after wave after wave of poorly trained, poorly equipped, poorly led troops down to the riverbank, and we were just massacring them, just wiping them out as soon as they got down there. And they just kept sending more and more and more. And over the course of several days, one guy told me we killed 500 Russian troops on that riverbank alone, right in that one spot. He said it just you start to get sick. It's sickening. And to think that, especially because these are not volunteers, likely the Russian government goes out to these villages out in the countryside and knocks on your door and says, "Congratulations, your son just joined the military. Have him report tomorrow." And they don't have any choice. And they get a rifle shoved in their hands, and they get sent off to the front with very little training, very little understanding of what they're even doing there, and sent off to die. And Russia has no problem. They've proven time and time again this is part of their strategy. This is not a bug in their system. It's a feature of their system. And they are just murdering their own troops over and over and over again, hoping to just wear down the Ukrainians, just grind them down over time. And they may, in fact, be able to do that. The outcome of this is not set. Ukraine has been performing admirably, but they released statistics today that they've lost 9,000 troops already in this war. They say Russia has lost something probably closer to 25 or 30,000 troops dead. It's unbelievable that the Ukrainians are extracting such a heavy price from the Russians, but it's not all because the Ukrainians are so motivated and better equipped and that sort of thing. Definitely better led, no question like that. Part of it is that Russia just doesn't care. and they're just sending everybody down to the riverbank and having them, just, it's almost like, when you see ants building a bridge based on other dead ants, they just drown ants to get across the river, and they all hook themselves together, and then they all walk across the bodies of their buddies. That's almost what Russia is trying to do. One Russian soldier wrote an article that was published in, I think, the New York Times or Washington Post yesterday, where he said, this is just sickening. I just can't do this anymore. We are literally trying to drown Ukraine in the bodies of Russian soldiers. And that's what we saw, what we heard from the troops on the front line down there. It goes right together with that. So it sounds like the truth. We also then were able to go back to Dnipro and in the surrounding area there and interview the Major General in charge of all Ukrainian airborne and air assault troops. Fantastic guy. We got along great, had lunch together. Really interesting talking to him. And he invited us back again. So hopefully we'll get a chance to take advantage of that at some point. Now, the 24th, which today is the 23rd, so the 24th is, you've probably heard about this, it's Independence Day here in Ukraine, independence from Russia, and it is the 6-month anniversary of this war. Russia is really big on dates and numbers and symbology and stuff like that, so they've been stockpiling missiles in anticipation of this date coming, and they are most likely going to put on a big show of attacking Kyiv tomorrow to just show that, yeah, we're still around. And Kyiv, sort of a master stroke in knowing that they wouldn't be able to have a proper victory day or celebration for Independence Day or anything like that, a parade that they would normally have down Main Street. I mean, not that they were worried so much about Russia, but just because they don't want to be celebrating when they've got thousands and tens of thousands of troops in the field that are suffering. And so they put the celebration aspect of Independence Day on hold, and instead they lined up a mile of destroyed Russian armor right down Main Street and made a silent parade of dead Russian tanks. It was a master stroke of marketing. These guys know what they're doing when it comes to marketing, that's for sure. And that's because Russia was just having parades and a fair in their country to try to sell Russian tanks and heavy equipment, armor and stuff, to their allies, being North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, countries like that. But they were trying to sell all this high-tech Russian armor to those people. So they had it all on display, and Vladimir Putin got up and gave a speech saying that this armor has been tested in combat. Well, all you have to do is come to Main Street here in Kyiv, and you can see the results of those tests, and they're not good. They're not pretty. I don't know if their sales were very good this year, but I doubt it. That is also a stick in the eye to the Russians, and that may, in fact, precipitate an attack from Russia. So we're going to stay here in Kyiv. The State Department of the United States has told all American citizens to flee, run away, get away from Kyiv or from Ukraine in general. They've been saying that for a long time. The likelihood of them hitting this hotel that I'm in is pretty low. And so we're going to stay because that's what we're here for, to cover the war. And let's pray that the Russians do not attack, and if they do attack, that Ukrainian anti-aircraft will shoot down all the missiles, and that they normally are able to shoot down most of them, and that people will not be killed in those attacks if they come. But we will be here to cover it, and we're getting ready to go to we're going to try to go to Estonia next week and do some reporting from there. So if you're tired of hearing me talk about Ukraine, I get it, I understand. This is the biggest war of our lifetime, at least in the Western world, and did not expect that half my year would be eaten up by reporting from Ukraine. But still, I've got more coming. We're starting to make plans now for where we're going to go next after this deployment is over at the end of the month. And part of that, I am going to go home and spend a little time in my own bed for once this year. So thanks for watching The Hot Zone. Please share it with your friends. You can support us at chuckholton.locals.com, chuckholton.locals.com. That would be a good place to go. And share it with your friends. Thank you very much. Take care.